Let's look at the next thing, which is thin uniformly charged disks. You are given a surface charge density as sigma. Okay, so you find that E on the axis is nothing but sigma into 2 epsilon naught 1 minus x by root r square minus x square, where r is this radius r, x is this distance, and this hypotenuse is nothing but root r square plus x square. Okay, similarly you can find the v on the axis. Generally disks don't generally come in the paper, so you might not think that this is important, but if you're trying to remember some things, then this is worth remembering. Let's now look at the energetics of the system. The energy density in a system with an electrical field E is given by half epsilon E square. The self energy of a uniformly charged shell is given by kq square by 2r, and the self energy of a uniformly charged solid non-conducting sphere. Note, for a charged shell it's kq square by 2r, and for a solid non-conducting sphere it's 3kq square by 5r. The things to note from here are, the most important thing is this: these two have generally not been asked before, but they can be asked, so you should take a note of them. Let's finally look at the dipole case. Okay, because dipoles are often the choice for the examiners in the question papers. So on the axis you have your electrical field given as 2 kp by rq. Okay, E on the axis, what this means is, if you're trying to calculate the position electrical fields on points that are on the line joining the two charges, okay, where this is the electrical dipole moment. Okay, and on the equatorial plane, which is at the center between these two, maybe on these points, electrical field is given by kp by rq. More generally, what you have is, at any point r comma theta, where r is your radial vector and theta is your polar coordinate, you have E is equal to kp by rq into root 1 plus 3 cos square theta. Okay, so it's essential for you to remember this form, because this can be reduced to find the E on the axis and the E on the equatorial position. Okay, similarly you can find the potential V at a general point, which is given by P dot R divided by 4 pi epsilon naught rq. Okay, this can be also be written as P dot r cap by 4 pi epsilon naught r square. Okay, one more thing that you should remember from here is, sometimes they might ask you about the direction of the electrical field of the dipole. For example, this gives you the magnitude of the electrical field, right? If you want to find the direction of the electrical field, then you should consider this equation. And what is this? For example, if your point O is at an angle theta from the center of the dipole, okay, and your net electrical field E net is at an angle alpha with your radial component. So this is your radial component, this is your theta component or the angular component, this is your E net. So if that angle is alpha, then you can find that angle easily by alpha is equal to tan inverse of E theta by ER, which is nothing but half of tan theta. So if you know this theta, the value of theta, then you can calculate what is the electrical field, and then using this formula you can calculate the direction of the electrical field. So if my alpha comes out to be 45, then that implies from the radial direction, my actual electrical field is at an angle 45 degrees. Okay, things you should remember from here are, you can easily find the two electrical fields in the radial and the theta direction, and they are given by ER is equal to minus del V by del R. Okay, so it gives me 2 kp cos theta by RQ, which is, and E theta is equal to minus 1 by r del v by del theta. Note these are the general forms of the polar coordinates. You should keep them in mind. Let's take a look at another question. The electrostatic potential inside a charged spherical ball is given by phi is equal to ar square plus b, where r is the distance from the center and a comma b are constants. Then the charge density inside the ball is given by which of the following expressions? So how do we proceed with this? First of all, let's just write my electric field in polar coordinates. It's nothing but del v by del r. Here v is given as phi, my del phi by del r, which is nothing but minus 2 times a into r. Okay. Next, we need to apply the Gauss theorem. What does the Gauss theorem say? If I make a spherical Gauss shell, I have my net flux, which is 4 pi r square into er, nothing but q by epsilon naught, because I made a spherical shell and the total surface area of the shell is how much? 4 pi r square. Okay, so this is 4 pi r square er is equal to q by epsilon naught, where q is the charge enclosed. Now if we just differentiate, we quickly get 4 pi d of r square er is equal to d of q by epsilon naught, which is 4 pi r square dr rho by epsilon naught. I am just writing q in terms of rho. Okay, that implies r square d of er plus 2r er dr is nothing but 1 by epsilon naught times rho r square dr. That implies dou E by dou R. Let's write this again. Dou E by dou R plus 2 by small r ER is equal to rho by epsilon naught. From here we can easily write that rho is equal to minus 6 epsilon naught A. So I am given another question to you. An electrical dipole has a fixed dipole moment P, which makes an angle theta with respect to the x-axis. When subjected to an electrical field E1, it experiences a torque T1. When subjected to another field E2, it experiences a torque T2. You're supposed to find theta in this problem. So I'll just make the diagram for this, which is quite trivial. This is your x-axis and this is your this is nothing but your dipole moment and this is your angle theta. Okay, now how do I proceed with this? Let me just write the net torque on the system due to both the electrical fields. So I have tau k cap minus tau k cap. I'm adding the two. It's nothing but px I cap plus py j cap crossed with ei cap plus root 3 e j cap. Okay, what this essentially means is px cross root 3 e k cap plus py e minus k cap. That implies 0 is equal to e k cap root 3 px minus py. That implies py by px is nothing but root 3, or tan theta is equal to root 3, or theta is equal to 60 degree. Next, let's take a brief look at conductors. Conductors are materials which contain large number of free electrons which can move freely inside the material. Okay. In electrostatics, conductors are always equipotential surfaces. You should also note that charge always resides on the outer surface of the conductor. So there cannot be a charge inside the conductor. For example, if I have a sphere here and if I give some positive charge, let's say by induction, I give some positive charge to the sphere, what will happen is this charge will quickly redistribute itself to the outer surface of the conductor. Okay, so there won't be any charge in the bulk of the conductor. For example, if this is solid, all the charge will just reside on the surface, on the outer surface. Next, you should notice the next point, which is the third point, which says that if there is a cavity inside the conductor having no charge, then charge will always reside only on the outer surface of the conductor. This is just specifying the exact condition in which the second point is valid. This says that this was my normal conductor. If this has a cavity inside it, okay, and there is no charge in this region, then what will happen is the charge that is there in the conductor will only reside on the outer surface. Okay. Next, what you should take a note of is the electrical field is always perpendicular to the conducting surface. In the initial phases, I showed you a diagram in which there was a positive charge here, okay, and then there were lines of force because this I had given a negative charge here, but this was a conductor. So even though the electrical field line is going here, every time it just touches, it becomes normal. Okay. So you should remember this diagram that we did before. For conductors, the electrical field will always be perpendicular to the conducting surface. Okay. Next, you should notice the electrical lines of force will never enter the conductor because the electrostatic these are all the things in the electrostatic condition. Electrostatic means charges are not moving. So if electrical fields start to enter the conductor, what will happen is electrical charges will start to move around because of the force. So that is not possible in the electrostatic condition. The next point is very essential. It is often asked in the exams in one or two problems. So you should always note that upon grounding is when I connect my conductor to the ground like this. Okay. Upon grounding, the potential becomes zero. The potential of the conductor becomes zero. Okay. If the conductor is isolated, then its charge also becomes zero. So only if the conductor is isolated, then the charge will go to zero or the charge will flow down. If it's connected to some other system, then the charge will not go to zero, but the potential will always go to zero. So whenever someone tells you that in a system something is grounded, you assume that the potential of that surface is equal to zero due to everything else that is there inside the system. Okay. Next, the point that I should mention is when two conductors are connected, there will be a charge flow till their potential becomes equal. This is also an essential point, and there are direct questions from these 2 points in the paper. Okay, so what I'll just retell it again. When two conductors are connected, let this be the first conductor, this be the second conductor, they will be connected by some electrical wire. Okay, a charge will flow between them till their potential becomes the same. If initially it was V1 and V2 and it had charges Q1 and Q2, what will happen is charges will flow till the point that the potentials will become V for both. Okay. Next, I will quickly summarize the results from closed conductors which are essential for the examination. First of all, let me draw a closed conductor for you. Let this be a conductor and let this be a shell, a cavity inside the conductor. So what do you mean by a cavity? Cavity means it's a hollow system and there is no matter inside it. Okay, so this is your bulk of the conductor, this is your conductor, and this is your cavity. Now what all things you should keep in mind is, first of all, if I keep a charge, let's say plus q, if I keep a charge q inside, this will induce a charge minus q on the inner surface of the conductor and a charge plus q on the outer surface. Similarly, if I give a charge minus q here, it will induce plus q here on the inner surface and minus q again on the outer surface. Next, what you should notice, if I give it some charge, let's say plus q, and I'm keeping this charge inside the cavity, and I give the conductor as a whole a charge, some capital Q, then due to the charge inside the cavity, a minus q will be induced on the inner surface and this will induce a charge plus q on the outer surface. So the charge on the outer surface is capital Q plus small q. The next result is about the electrical fields at different points. Okay, so I'll just keep this same figure here. In the same conditions, let's see what the electrical fields are at different points. Let's say at a point A, at a point B, and let's say at a point C. Okay, so first of all, the resultant field due to this charge Q, let's call it Q, the resultant field due to this charge Q which is inside the cavity and the induced charge on the inner surface at any point outside S1. At any point, let me call this S1, this surface as S1, this outer surface as S2. Okay, so resultant electrical field due to these two charges is 0. So the resultant field due to the charges at B, C both are 0. Okay, now the resultant field due to the charges on the outer surface, which is Q plus Q. Okay, and any other charge outside S2. For example, there are more charges present here. Okay, resultant field due to all these charges at any point inside the surface S2 is 0. Okay, so in this entire system, including the cavity, okay, the electrical field due to any charge on this outer surface or outside the system is 0. So this, what this means is, if it's a conductor, then none of the electrical fields will penetrate it. Okay, there is no electrical field in this entire region. There is no electrical field in this entire region due to the charges that are present outside. All these are basically derived from the Gauss law, which I'll do in one of the questions, which will make it more clear. Now, with the help of a question, I will try to explain several concepts that are extremely essential for the paper. Let's look at the question. Find charge on each spherical shell after joining the innermost shell and outermost shell by a conducting wire. Also find the charges on each surface. So first of all, I will try to make the system again. This is my circle. This is my outer circle. This is my inner circle. And this is my third circle. Okay. Let me call these as circle number 1, circle number 2, wait, Wait a second. I'll just draw them again. Circle number 1, circle number 2, and circle number 3. What is given to you is the radii are 2r and 3r. Okay. Now let's first look at the charges that are given to you. So I'll mark these charges. So it's given that the inner shell has a charge q, the middle shell has a charge minus 2q, and the outer shell has a charge 5q. Now the things that you should remember is for conductors, the electrical field inside a conductor is equal to 0. This is extremely essential. Why is it essential? Although there is no conducting material here, all this is hollow space, you should take a note that these shells in themselves, okay, are small conductors, and inside the shell in the electrostatic condition there should be no field. What does this mean? If I just zoom into this picture, what will I get? I will be getting a surface like this. Okay, although it's very thin, there will be a surface like this which will have two parts. It will have an outer part. I'll write this in. It will have an outer part and it will have an inner part, a surface and outer surface. Okay, so this should be very clear. I can even enhance this so that you guys can see it properly. This surface is like this. Okay, so although the thickness is very less, if you zoom into it, it's basically having an inner side and an outer side. Okay, now this will become very essential when we are trying to find the charges on each surface. Okay, so just remember this concept in your mind. So let's start looking at the question, and then we'll look at things as they become relevant. So what they say is they have joined the first spherical shell with the outermost spherical shell. Okay, so let me just join these via conducting wire. Okay, I have joined these with a conducting wire. So what happens when you join two conductors? When you join two conductors, their potential becomes the same. That implies V1 is equal to V3. Okay, so this is another thing that you need to remember to solve any of the questions of this sort. You could have been given in the question that the first surface is grounded or the third surface is grounded. What does it mean? When you ground something, that implies the potential there, for example V1 is equal to 0 in the first case, or V3 is equal to 0 in the second case, because it's based on the same principle. You're connecting something, you're connecting two things together, and then their potentials will become the same. Okay, ground is assumed to be at 0. So this should also be remembered, because there are many questions in which the grounding criteria is given, but it's similar to the criteria that I'm talking about here. Let me just draw this in small format. Okay, so with the two basic things clear, let's proceed with this. So what is V1? Now V1 can be written as V at the shell 1, which is any point on this shell, due to the charges on shell 1 plus due to the charges that are there on shell 2 plus potential due to the charges that are there on the shell 3. Okay, similarly V3 can be written as potential at 3 due to the charges at the shell 1 plus potential at 3 due to the charges at the shell 2 plus potential at shell 3 due to the charges at the shell 3. Okay, this can be extended to many shells and this can be extended to any other electrical charge that is outside the system as well. Okay, so this is the first condition. Now the next thing that I want you to revisit and carefully remember is, if this is my shell, we know that the electrical field inside is equal to 0. Okay, and electrical field outside is nothing but kq by r square, where r is the distance from the center to that point r. Now this point can be here, this r could be at right at the radius r, and this r could be inside as well. Okay, for it being inside, electrical field is 0. For it being on the surface or outside the surface, electrical field is given by kq by r square. Now you should remember what the potential looks like. Potential is nothing but an integral of E dot dr from infinity to r. What does it mean? You are trying to bring in a charge from 0 potential to some region r. What does this mean? You have a charged sphere or a shell. My charge is at infinity. I am trying to bring this charge close to some point at a distance r. Now this distance r could be here, this r could be right at the surface, then it becomes capital R radius, or it could be somewhere inside. Okay, for all the three cases the potentials are quite different. As you can see from this integral, and if you have a basic knowledge of maths, you can see that I can split any integral. For example, my infinity to r integral, if its r is outside, then I have E dot dr. Okay, even if the r is equal to capital R, this will become just this. This will give me the value of the potential at the surface. But what about the values of potentials inside R when R is less than R? For this case, what will happen is, I can split my integral into two parts till R plus integral of R till R. This is the case for R is less than R. Okay, so you're basically trying to move your charge from infinity to some point R, and then moving it closer to the shell. Then you come at this point and then you move it inside. So in this first half of the trajectory, okay, what happens is it is experiencing an electrical field which is finite. But as soon as you try, if it gets inside, electrical field that it will face here, there is 0. Okay, so here by E dot dr, whatever I write here, this E inside is 0. So this goes to 0. What this leaves me with is potential at the surface. Okay, so what this essentially means is, if you have a sphere like this, and if you go from the surface towards the inside, the potential difference, the dV, change in potential, is equal to 0. Okay, so change in potential is equal to 0 means the potential at R remains the same. So the potential here is also potential at the radius R, here also VR, here also VR. Okay, everywhere the value of the potential is the same as that at the radius is equal to your value of distance R. Okay, with this in mind, we come back to our question, and this basic concept will be used so much that you'll probably find one question from this every time, or a similar question in the examinations. So if you should not miss out on the major concepts. Okay, so if I just try to write these things, I'll be using this as my master equation coming from this. Okay, and then let's look at the question again. What does the question say? You are connecting the inner shell 1 to the outer shell by a conducting wire. Now what happens when you connect two conductors? what will happen is their potentials will become the same, okay, which I have said here. So alongside this, charges will redistribute. Charges redistribute. Okay. So what this means is some charge will flow either from the inner surface to the outer surface or the outer surface to the inner surface. Sorry, from the first shell to the third shell or third shell to the first shell. What all I am certain about is that the potentials will come to a common value. Okay. Now, how do you proceed with these things? What you do is, let me assume that the charge after the charges have gone from one part to the other, my charge on the inner surface be inner shall be x. Okay, now as you know that charges are conserved, so initial charge total summation of q initial is equal to summation of q final. Okay, while the charges are being transported, so that implies initially in the inner shell I had a charge of how much? I had a charge of q and outer charge was 5q. So finally also it should be the same. So if I give a charge of x to the inner one, what will be the final one? It will be 6q minus x. Okay, only then will the charges satisfy, right? So using this you can mark the charges in your question, 6x minus 5. Okay, same thing you will do if you have grounded one of the shells, then also you will be approaching the question in the same fashion. Okay, so I'll just remove this. I mark the charges. This inner shell is not being connected to anything, the middle shell, so its charge will remain as minus 2q. Now you use this. What does this imply? So by V11 is basically the potential at the shell 1 due to the shell 1 is what? It's k x by small r, capital R. Due to the second one, what do we have? We have minus 2q by 2r. Why is it 2r? Because due to the second shell, for the second shell, if I consider the second shell, okay, for the second shell, this point on the first shell is inside it. So because it's inside, the electrical field is 0 for it inside due to the charges on the second shell, and the potential inside is equal to the potential at the surface. So 2r is the distance of the surface. Similarly for the third shell also, if I consider the third shell, with respect to the third shell, the first shell is inside. Okay, so because the first shell is inside, I can write this as k into 6x minus sorry, this is not 6x, this is 6q minus x. It becomes 6q minus x divided by 3r. Okay, because for the third shell also this is inside, so the potential will be equal to the potential at the surface of the third shell. Now if I write V31, now I am calculating the potential at this point. Okay, so the potential at this point due to the first shell is what? This point is outside the shell, so my potential will be k x by 3r. For the second one, what will it be? It will be minus 2kq by 3r again. Okay, and for the third one, what will it be? Plus k 6q minus x divided by how much? 3r again. Okay, so this much is clear, right? Now how do you proceed with this? You just basically cut the common terms on both the sides. Okay, I'll use another pen to do this. R's also go away. Uh, this entire term is the same on both sides. So you have x minus 2x minus q is equal to what is there? It's x by 3 minus 2q by 3. Okay, that implies 3x minus 3q is equal to x minus 2q. Okay, which implies q minus q is equal to minus 2x, or x is equal to q by 2. So I just want you to make sure you understand this properly. So you have the first shell in red, the second shell, and the third shell. Okay. Now, how do you calculate the charges that are there? Okay, so let me just tell you briefly about how this works. If I place a charge somewhere inside the cavity, okay, then if I draw a Gaussian surface, which is this one, the first Gaussian surface will tell me that the electrical field is equal to how much? Is equal to q by, electrical flux. Electrical flux is how much? Q by epsilon naught. This is the charge q. Okay, so there will be some electrical field in this region, finite electrical field. Okay, so let this charge be q at the center. Now if I make a Gaussian surface, which is the second one, this Gaussian surface, because due to this Gaussian surface, as it is going through a conductor, my electrical field should be 0. Okay, that means the net charge inside this Gaussian surface should be 0. That is why we will assume that this charge plus q induces a charge minus q on the inner surface, so that the net charge inside this Gaussian surface is 0, so that what is valid? E is equal to 0 in a conductor. Okay, for E to be 0, your flux has to be 0, and for that to happen, the charge inside has to be 0, because flux is equal to your q by epsilon naught, right? Q enclosed by epsilon naught. So what happens is you introduce a minus q here. Let's look at another field here. Okay, now electrical field at this point, and because we have induced a minus q charge here on the surface itself, there should be a charge conservation, so there will be a plus q charge here. Okay, now if I take this Gaussian surface into consideration, here again the flux through this is equal to the net charge inside divided by epsilon. Now what is the net charge? It is q plus minus q plus plus q, which is equal to just a positive q charge. Okay, so this is equal to q by epsilon naught. Okay, so you can see the electrical field in this region using this. It is a finite one. Okay, next if I look at this Gaussian surface which is passing through the second shell, what do I see? Now due to this Gaussian surface, let's first of all just make the charge that we had made before. Okay, now as this Gaussian surface is passing through a conductor, the flux through it, or the electrical field inside the conductor needs to be 0. So the net charge inside it needs to be 0 because of the Gauss theorem. If the charge needs to be 0, right now the charge is how much? Plus q, minus q, and plus q. Okay, so for the charge to be 0, on the inner surface there is a charge induced as minus q. Okay, and now the minus q is induced, the net charge in the inside this Gaussian surface is 0. So you are fine with the theorem, and because a minus q has been imposed, so I'll put a plus q on the outer one so that the charges are conserved. Okay. Next, similarly, you can see that inside this, how much net charge is there? Net charge is again plus q, because these ones cancel out. Only this one remains. So due to this also, the flux is equal to q by epsilon naught. Okay, which is fine. But if you again consider this inside the third shell, what you will find, the net electrical field inside should be 0. So the net charge inside should be 0. Okay, and for that to happen, because there is a positive charge right now here, so in the inner surface of the third shell, I will get a minus q induced charge and a plus q outside. After I have this, this means that I can apply Gauss theorem here and it is still valid because the net charge now is 0. Everything cancelled out inside. That will leave me with a positive q charge outside. So this is what happens. This is how induction happens. Okay, this is how charges move forward, and this is how you will approach this question. Okay, with this very elaborate thing in mind, let us bring our attention back to our question. So what does our question say? Our question say that the inner surface is having a charge as plus x or x. Okay, now that is essential information. So we use the above thing to find that there is a x charge on the outer surface of 1. Okay, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and 1 is connected to 2. Okay, now charge on this surface is x. So due to the, if I use the first green ring, the first Gaussian surface, I see that there is no charge inside, so I don't need to induce any charge. There is no charge inside. So we are fine with the first one. Now what about the second one? There is a charge of 2q on this surface that has been given in the question. Okay, sorry, minus 2q. There is charge of minus 2q given on this surface. Now if I consider the second Gaussian surface, the net charge inside should be how much? It should be equal to 0. Right now the net charge inside is some plus x. Okay, so what will happen? A minus x charge will get induced here. Okay, and that will lead to a positive charge plus x on the outer surface of second one. Okay, this is quite clear. So let's talk about the third Gaussian surface. It has a charge of 6q minus x outside on the outer surface. If I take this Gaussian surface, the net charge inside should be 0 because it's going through a conductor. Now what is the net charge? These two cancel out. Okay, you are remaining with this. So how much is induced? Minus 2q plus the negative of this. So you have x minus 2q induced on the inner surface, and sorry, you have 2q minus x induced on the inner surface, and on the outer surface you get x plus 2q as the charge. Now if I just substitute x is equal to q by 2, what does this give me? I have q by 2 here, I have minus q by 2 here. On the outer one, what do I get? I get x minus 2x, so that is q by 2 minus 2q. What is q by 2 minus 2q? Is equal to q minus 4q by 2 is equal to minus 3q by 2. Okay, so this outer surface has minus 3q by 2. So this surface gets how much? 3q by 2, the inner surface of third one. And what does it give on the outer one? Gives you it induces a charge minus 3q by 2 outside. Okay, now the outside charge was already 6q minus q by 2, which was how much? 12q minus q by 2 is equal to 11 q by 2. Okay, so this outer charge was 11 q by 2, and then you added a minus 3 q by 2, so it's 11 minus 3, which is 8 q by 2 is equal to 4q.